And I remember sharing the financial figures of the first 3 months. We had done a revenue of tens of thousands of dollars in the first 3 months. And I'm like, exactly. That was my reaction, wow. And this was even the stage where it wasn't perfect. It's a bit more mature. It's done even every quarter that we do an assessment of the figures, we keep surpassing the previous quarter. So it keeps growing in leap and bounds. So I guess the key is that sometimes if you don't take that last push, a lot of people that you don't know are depending on you taking that last push. And for me, it took me talking to you to get my mind shifted away from the possibility of letting it die.
Hello, welcome to Creativity Boost Podcast. Today I'm super excited because I have with me on the show an inventor, a creator, and also a friend of mine. He goes by the name Samuel. And as we go into the conversation, you're going to hear a lot about his story of how he went from being a discouraged creative to being a creator of a profitable product. Hi, Samuel. How you doing?
Hi, I'm doing good. It's great to be on the podcast with you. I've heard so many episodes. Really glad to be here.
Yeah, thank you for coming on, and it's a pleasure to have you. You want to tell us about yourself for those who haven't met you before?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Samuel. I'm the founder of BistraPay. It's a money transfer platform, and did computer science, also did research in computer science on a really interesting topic. And I think I have a story, an interesting story of how I sort of got into entrepreneurship. I've always been an entrepreneur, but I have a story about how I got into entrepreneurship, how I met you, and how everything sort of panned out. And I'm really glad to be here to talk about my story, and hopefully that inspired some of the listeners out there and those who may be watching as well.
Absolutely. Now that you've set the ball rolling, why don't you tell us about how your journey and your foray into the world of entrepreneurship began?
Absolutely, by all means. So I think my earliest memory of being an entrepreneur was back when I was in secondary school. Think we had this science experiment where we had to get frogs and dissect frogs and all that. And I remember a lot of my classmates didn't want to go near frogs, and I decided I was going to go frog hunting. So I went frog hunting, got lots of frogs and sold to my classmates. And then that sort of graduated into selling pens, and that also graduated into selling computers and, fixing computers for money. And I think the process of graduating into selling computers and fixing computers sort of gave me the love I have for computers today, because I studied computer science in my undergrad, in my master's, and my doctorate as well. And I think because I was so invested in computers and also being an entrepreneur by heart, I sort of identified some gaps that my skill set could fill. And that was that I noticed that there were discriminations against African currencies. I studied in Ukraine. I lived in Ukraine for about 8 years. And it was a real challenge for Nigerians living there to get money to and fro, because all the money transfer platforms just would not work for African currencies. So I was like, I could fill in this gap, take money from person A, give it to person B, and sort of I built a business, a profitable business for myself. And then when I gained the expertise to actually build an app, both front end, back end, I gained enough expertise, I decided to go all in, build the app, and mentor some others to help with the building as well. And lots of challenges along the way, but ultimately came out successful with an actual working app with real users, real numbers that can be shown.
Wow, that's fantastic. So you studied in Ukraine for 8 years before you moved to Canada.
Yes.
And for those who are listening, Samuel is a Canada-based entrepreneur, and he's doing really big things for the Africans in diaspora with his product. Now, can we go into your idea and where your idea was before we met and had our discussion about your journey?
Yes, this is something I always love to share. I personally love to share my story. And in case anyone is curious, the app is called BistraPay. And it's a coinage from the Russian word bistra, and then pay, of course, being a remittance.
So what does the word bistro mean in Russian?
Yeah, so
what does the word mean in Russia?
Yeah, good question. Bistra means fast. And
wow.
that was the emphasis of why that was the emphasis of the problem that I was trying to solve, in that even though there were means of getting money across, they were snail slow. It was really difficult to get the money across as quickly as possible, and you could imagine lives depending on money getting across borders quickly. And so I think I had gained the expertise to build these things. I had the funds available as well to get some of the stuff I didn't have the expertise to build myself. So I had the funds to hire people to do those for me. And ultimately, I had a somewhat ready product that could be used, but there were legal challenges, compliance challenges, that you had to get this you had to get this particular company to work with you, you had to get that one to work with you, and everyone would be like, oh no, it's a high risk industry, we won't work with you. So it was more of a chicken and an egg problem, in that they would work with you if you had tons of funds. But the problem is, how do you get the tons of funds if they don't work with you? So the product was kind of in a standstill place, because it was ready for use by real users, but in order to make that final push to get it out there, I needed a few collaborations with a few companies. And I think at that point, I had done research. I'm talking about years of research.
How many years?
I think the time it took to actually build a product to a ready stage was about 3 years. And wow. I think I hit a block on year 2.5. And I think at that point I was kind of giving up. Like, okay, you know what? I have exhausted every possible knowledge. I've exhausted every possible avenue I thought I had. And I think it's an interesting one, that knowledge alone is not enough, because I knew the companies I could work with, but it was just, how do you get them to work with you? So that was when you and I got talking, and I was like, I have this product. I've abandoned it for the last 6 months, and this is a challenge. And you just sort of, gave me a few suggestions, and especially talking about how to not let your dream die, in that this is a child that you've incubated. Yes, your brainchild. I remember that word specifically, your brainchild. That this is something you've incubated on. It's literally alive. It's just at that stage of breathing life into it. Like, there, just breathe the life into it. Whatever that means. Maybe that means taking that one extra step, talking to that one extra person, reading that one extra book, listening to that one extra message, that was just the life that I needed to breathe into it. And in this case, it was speaking with you, and it just opened up the possibility of, what, if these folks are not going to work with me, I do have the expertise to build what they have. It may not be the perfect way, but at least it will get the product out there into the hands of people that would ultimately use it and get me to that point of having an egg that would end up being a chicken.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
And I remember when we got talking that day, and you showed me your idea, your product, and I was like, wow. You told me you spent 3 years working on this, and I was like, wow, this is amazing. I asked you what infrastructure and whatnot have you put in. You told me, I was like, this is a full-blown company already. What's
Yes.
going on? And you were like, well, you've not been able to launch it because you had some issues with getting someone or a company to partner with you and all of
Yeah.
that. And then I just kept saying this, you're suppressing your inner Zuckerberg.
Yes, I remember those words.
And, it came out from a place because I had committed myself to helping people birth their brain children, because I've come to understand that just the way when a woman is pregnant with a baby, sometimes she can go through the gestation period and deliver that baby naturally. And even when she does, she needs some assistance. She needs a doctor. She needs a midwife. And sometimes the woman may even need to go through a cesarean section, and she also needs like a surgeon or something like that. I came to understand in my journey as a creativity coach that there are people who have brain children shut up in their minds, shut up in their brains, and they need help with that last push. They need help to midwife their ideas and bring it to life. They need a mind surgeon to help operate them in quote, and help them bring those ideas to life. So when I heard about your challenge and where you were in your journey, I knew that this was one of such cases where you needed that push. And for me, that's all I've been about. And it may sound like, oh, it's just simple, it's just, but creativity is something that many people have, and it may look like, oh, it's not too big of a deal, but they don't know that inside of that idea lies a lot of possibilities. And so they just go around pregnant with an idea and never ever give that idea expression, and they end up going to the grave with those brain children. So I was really passionate the way I was talking to you. I was burning in my heart, like, you can't go with this idea without launching. Yeah, I want to say something.
Yes, I remember that first conversation about this idea, how I think we spoke for over an hour or something like that, just talking. And I remember it was like, I think this is what I need to not give up on this dream. For me, it wasn't about starting a company. I am an entrepreneur by heart. If I didn't do this, I probably would do something else. But it was more of, I had started something and I had invested so much because it was meant to help people, right? And then if I had let that dream die, if we hadn't spoken and that dream had died, and like the app is just sitting somewhere in my computer and all that, I can imagine how many people I would have robbed of the opportunity of help. And I remember sharing the financial figures of the first 3 months. We had like done a revenue of like tens of thousands of dollars in the first 3 months. And I'm like, exactly. That was like that was my reaction. Like, wow, like this thing that was sitting in my computer did a revenue of tens of thousands of dollars in its first 3 months. And this was even the stage where it wasn't perfect. There was like, we were like testing with real users, lots of feedbacks and incorporating those feedbacks. And even now that it's a bit more mature, it's done even like every quarter that we do like an assessment of the figures, we keep like surpassing the previous quarter. So it keeps growing in leap and bounds. So I guess the key is that last push, sometimes if you don't take that last push, a lot of people that you don't know are depending on you taking that last push. And for me, it took me talking to you to get my mind shifted away from the possibility of letting it die. I always say one thing, that in my last days, one of the things I would look back is take account of all the children that God has given me and see, I think I personally would regret thinking about those children that I did not birth. Because I know that I think I am of the mindset that lots of people depend on you birthing those children. You don't know them.
Yeah.
They might not even know you. I see when we first launched the product, the first set of people that signed up were people that I knew personally, that I'm like, hey, finally it's out there. And then now there's like tons of users. I have no idea who they are. They are just like browsing around, they find the app, they download, they use. And some of them send messages, some of them give feedback, some of them are like, hey, you can improve this. But the underlying thing is that you don't know everyone that is dependent on you birthing your brainchild. That is why the responsibility is on you, whether you're conscious of it or not, to make sure that you actually give birth to that brainchild.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to take a step back, you had worked on that idea for 3 years. So the problem was not necessarily the skill, right? So there are many people out there who have skill, but because they lack that spark, that creative spark that would fire them up into action, they find themselves stuck. And so it's not so much the skill to do the thing, but actually the spark, the ignition, the fire to actually move from idea to profitable creation, right? And there are many people who are on this journey. Some are stuck at the point of conceiving the idea and they've not even worked on it. Some have started and they stop because they don't feel like it's worth the while. Some have moved a bit and they're halfway through the journey and they feel like there's no support and they feel like, man, maybe I'm just an imposter. Maybe this thing will not work. Maybe these are things I shouldn't do. There are people who finally get to the end, or maybe 80% to the end of the project or the idea, and they just need one last push and they don't do it. And it doesn't matter what industry the idea is in. So you may be listening to this. We're trying to like help people listening to this to have that understanding that the principles remain the same. You may be building an app, maybe building a company, maybe designing something, you may be an artist, you may be a scientist, you may be an author. I've met many authors who had manuscripts in their wardrobe for decades and never published until they met me, and I'm like, you have to birth your brain children. Now, you want to talk about like the second discussion we had where, you know, you were like, maybe this thing is really not worth the while. Well, I've tried everything. I've exhausted all the options and I just kept pushing. So do you want to talk about that for those who are listening?
Yeah, sure. But before I go into that, just want to corroborate what we just finished talking about. I remember part of the process of finishing the app was learning new skills on the job. So I'm a software developer. I'm big into computers, developing stuff with computers. But there are other skills that I needed. There's like the administrative skill. There's like the product skill. There's like all these other things, design, that I had no idea about. But in order not to do a mediocre job, you've seen the app, like clean, nice. Yeah. I had to learn about what makes a good user interface, what makes it easy for like what makes people stick around. I had to learn about marketing, had to learn about funnels, top of funnel, down funnel, and marketing tools and all that.
Wow.
So part of it, I guess, rolling into the question of being discouraged, I think part of it was I had amassed so much knowledge. And I think I was at the point that, if you plucked me out of that project and put me in someone else's project, I would be an asset, right? Because I had so much knowledge. I knew so much about what I was doing, but I had gotten to the point where I think my head was filled with knowledge, but I was blocked. I was gated by policies and, whatnot. And I thought there's no way I'm ever going to cross this bridge. Just because some of those were so difficult to cross if you wanted to do a good job. But the truth is that I didn't need to cross those bridges. The truth was that I needed to create an alternative way to get to my destination. And then getting to my destination, I could look back, reassess, and compare the two different routes. Do I go to these people that I wanted to work with, or do I stick to what I have created? And I think after we had that discussion and, you kept pushing, you kept encouraging, and I thought, you know what, I think I shared some of the solutions that I had thought about, and it was creative in a way that companies are charging tens of thousands of dollars a month to do what I did in 2-3 days.
Yeah.
In 2-3 days, I was able to bring something that was reliable, stable, and held us for about 6 months, where people were using the product. Nobody could notice it was fast, it was seamless, and all that. And
I remember when I was, I called you the second time and I told you I have an idea. I think you can use this method, and you were like, I'm not sure this will work.
Yes.
I said this thing would work. Yeah, you want to say something?
And the interesting thing is, prior to when you had called me, I had explored that specific option, and I think I told you. Yeah, I think I told you that I don't think it would work because of this, because of that. I had somehow explored it, but I was exploring that option with tired eyes. I was exploring the option without spark, without conviction that it could work. So it was that discussion that made me go back and just redrew the plans and okay, maybe this would actually work. Let me give it another try. Maybe it would actually work with a fresh set of eyes, without bias of trying it before, and it worked. So yes, I think sometimes when you think you're stuck, maybe your eyes are just tired. Maybe you're just too tired to see that there are different options out there. Right. So that was the case for me. And thankfully we had that discussion, and then I shared the idea with you. We iterated on the idea and eventually found that, okay, yeah, it actually could work. You were one of the people that tested.
Yeah. And it just goes to show that, sometimes we need someone apart from us to help us with that creative spark to move from where we are to where we need to be. And that's why I basically do what I do. That's what Creativity Boost is all about, because it paints a picture of you're in a car, you're trying to go somewhere and your car is stuck, maybe your battery is drained, and then you need someone to come and help jumpstart your battery. And the person comes with an external power source and plugs it into your battery and charges it up and jumpstart the battery, and you're able to go from where you are to where you need to be with speed and direction. You're able to accelerate to that point. And so that's why I offer this program, Creativity Accelerator program, where I help people who have ideas, who have gifts, who have skills, who have potential, who have talent, and they are stuck, they are frustrated, they are they're suppressing their inner Zuckerberg like you were, or they are just discouraged. And
Yeah.
I help these people get unblocked because I know that that idea could bring them thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, and billions of dollars. And that's why I believe, like you have said, that sometimes you just need to talk to someone, and not just
Right.
anyone, but someone that can inspire creativity in you,
Yes.
ignite your creativity.
And
So
yeah.
how has your journey how has your journey changed the way you view your ideas generally, and what has that inspired in you with respect to your ideas? Because I believe as you're looking at me, as you're sitting and talking with me, you still have a lot more ideas where that
Mm.
idea came from. And so how has that inspired a
Um,
new direction for you?
that's a great question. I'll take a step back for a moment and make it known that despite talking to you, I needed the right environment for our discussions to grow. Because after I had spoken with you, I deliberated, I had the spark, and I'm married. I shared the ideas you and I discussed, shared with my wife, who also happens to be a tech person. And I think because she helped water that environment, she corroborated the fact that it could actually work, that give it a try. So I think that also did help in making
Absolutely.
sure that because a lot of people will get a spark and then they go back to an environment, to a damp environment, and guess what? The spark dies. Right. So it's important to nurture the spark that you get. If that means separating yourself from discouraging environments, if it means separating yourself from a discouraging topic, or like you've been trying to research something, it's so hard, it discourages you, you got a spark. If it means taking a break from it and going into some other place, I think the main thing is to make sure that you do water that environment so that the seed that was sown would grow. And in terms of the my outlook about my other ideas, I think what I now know is that I can do anything. And I'm not saying this because I'm on the podcast. I'm saying this because I know that what it takes for me to do anything, literally anything, is number one, taking the first step. Number two, taking the last step. The first step is basically kicking it in motion. The last step is, even if it is imperfect, making sure that I get it out there to the right hands. I speak to the right person. I read the right books. I watch the right videos. I, just basically nurture the idea until it comes to life, because a lot of people take the first step, don't take the last step. Some want to jump to the last step without taking the first step. But I have some other ideas that I'm also working on in parallel. But ultimately, I think I'll share an example of it. Now there's like this buzz of AI, everyone is crazy about AI. And I have been exploring the different ways that, I can integrate AI into the product. How can it improve the product? How can I didn't know anything about artificial intelligence, but now I'm reading about it. I'm taking courses. I have like this software. I'm trying to explore.
You're feeding your
Yeah,
brainchild.
exactly.
Yeah.
So even if eventually I don't apply to this specific product, I know enough to apply to something else. And in some other spheres of life, I try to study people's use cases, like how are they applying artificial intelligence into like their products, into their day-to-day lives. How do you train a model and things like that? So just going back, my outlook generally has changed in that I can do anything. I just need to take the first step and make sure that I don't stop in the middle. I take the very last step it takes for the child to come. Even if the child comes and starts crawling for 15 years instead of walking, the child is here. He's here to stay.
Yeah, and I remember something I said when we were having our chat, and I was like, even if it's for the joy of creating, you have to launch this app. Even if this app gets launched and fails and nobody downloads it and you don't make any money, you have to birth this brainchild for the joy of birthing this brainchild. This brainchild deserves to breathe. It deserves to live. There are people out there that needs to experience it, and I'm super excited. I'm super excited, and I must actually congratulate you for actually running with that spark, because like you said, you could have as well listened to the inspiration, the strategies, the principles that I shared, and you'll have gone back to where you were before, or feeling that it wasn't possible, or feeling discouraged, or feeling like, man, maybe it's not worth it. But you took a chance on me, and you took a chance on yourself, and thanks to your wife also, who helped us nurture the idea and see where we are today. So this brings me to another question that I'd like to ask you. From working on an idea for 2.5 years to 3 years, and I'm sure you spent weekends and nights on that idea. It didn't look like it was gonna make it or see the light of day, and then launching that idea, and now you're generating very, very good and handsome revenue, 20 to 30K monthly and more. Wow, that's amazing. How do you feel?
It feels great, to be honest. I always say that you think you know love, but you don't until you actually see a product that you've birthed. That could be a child, like an actual child. That could be anything, that whatever it is that emanates from you, seeing it live,
come alive,
right? Seeing it come alive. And to be honest, it was not easy going through that process, that gestation process. Sometimes
it's painful.
It is painful.
Growing pains are there.
Yes.
The mental,
it takes a mental toll on you. It does. Especially when you spend long hours, and like at the very start when you're just trying to put everything together and it doesn't look like it's going to work. I think I held on to the faith that I know that this thing is going to work, even though towards the end, strategists, things, researchers and experts out there, everything pointed to the fact that it wasn't going to work. But the fact that I held on to the faith that it would work gave me the courage to keep pushing. And again, I also have to appreciate my wife for giving me that opportunity to spend as much time as I did building it. So again, the right environment matters when it comes to creativity and birthing a brainchild, right? It wasn't easy. Sometimes I would be on my laptop for like weekends while everybody else is like doing stuff. 10, 11 hours just sitting, working on it, and come eat, go back to it. And sometimes I'd stay awake all night. But it has gone beyond that point now that I need to spend all those long hours. So like I'm reaping the reward of spending those long hours.
Wow. And I just want to add that he's also a father, so it's not just a husband. Right. So imagine working on an idea, nights and weekends, being a father, being a husband. Wow, I must say kudos to your wife also. And that's it. It takes a community to birth a brainchild, just the way it takes a community to birth a human child, right? And so I wanted to ask you a question. Do you have any word for people out there who have ideas, they're stuck, they're discouraged, they're suppressing their creativity, their creative ideas, they're discouraged, their ideas have been dormant for years. These are ideas that could potentially bring them hundreds of thousands of dollars, millions of dollars, or even billions of dollars. Do you have anything to say to them?
Yeah, sure. I think the first thing I would want you to realize as someone who is probably stuck is that you are stuck because you're looking at the wrong thing. If you're looking at the right things, you would not be stuck. You would consider yourself stuck. And it may not necessarily be your fault that you're seeing the wrong things. It may just be situations, news, experts, whatever are telling you this is the right thing. But it takes either talking to someone else or it takes going an extra step to find out that you have been looking at the wrong things. Besides being a father, a husband, a software engineer, entrepreneur, I'm also a Christian, and I know that uh, you you have to look at the right thing, right? There are so many things. I think life is like I forget what it's called now, like a mirror house where you have so many different mirrors around you. You're standing in the midst of them, but there's only one way out. You can bump into any of those mirrors if you choose to look that direction as the way out. But the truth is, there's only one way out. So you need to focus on the right thing for you to get unblocked. And that could be talking to someone who would open your mind to new possibilities. That could be you unlearning some of the things you've learned, right? That could be you. There's this preacher that I really love, Miles Monroe.
Yeah, me too.
He said, yeah, a great guy. So he said the richest place in the world is a
Just
grave.
spot on earth is the graveyard. Yeah.
It's a graveyard. The moment I heard that, it really resonated with me because I could have gone to my grave with this idea. And now the company is doing hundreds of thousands of revenue, right?
Wow.
That's potentially hundreds of thousands of revenue going to the grave without being rotted, right?
Amazing.
So you have to look at the right thing, and you also have to be accountable to yourself. If you've invested your time, your energy in something, you have to make yourself accountable to making sure that you see it through. Take that last step. Again, that last step could be watching a video, speaking to someone, listening to a particular kind of music, reading a kind of book, or speaking to
signing up for Creativity Accelerator.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say speaking to a creative expert that could help you realize that you've been looking at the wrong thing, that there's new possibilities. But essentially, you're stuck there because you're looking at the wrong thing. Snap back into reality. There are other ways to get to that destination that you want to get to.
Wow, that's really profound. And it just reminded me of one of the conversations we had where you told me something that you felt like you owed this idea to God to manifest it, to manifest that creative idea. And you felt like you will be accountable to God when your time is done. And he's going to ask you, what did you do with this idea? And you also mentioned the quote by Miles Monroe. I feel that's part of what has mandated me to do what I do, because there are many people who are heading to the growth with $1 billion ideas, with $1 million ideas, with hundreds of $1,000 ideas, and they don't know. They know they are helpless. They know they are heading for the growth with these ideas sitting in their head, and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to make a U-turn. So I feel that call to stop these people from taking those $1 billion ideas to the grave. And whoever is listening to this and you're at that point, I encourage you to check out my program and book a strategy sessions. We can talk about it, and if it's something that you feel like would help you in your journey, and I feel like we are going to make a good fit, then we can proceed. But no matter what you do, don't sleep on your ideas. So back to the question I was going to ask you about your revelation, or about your insight into that revelation about being accountable to God with the ideas with the talent he has given to you? Do you want to share on that a bit?
Yes, for sure. I'm a creative person. I have so many creative ideas. And for someone like me who also has the skill sets to bring some of these ideas to life, I feel that it is a huge investment from God to give you an idea and to give you the resources you need to birth it. The Bible says it is God that works in you both to will and to do, right?
Yeah.
So because I'm a Christian, I hold myself accountable to God. I know that those ideas are not, they didn't fly with the wind to my head.
Yeah.
Like
God put them there.
God put them there, right? So God is doing his part by putting the ideas. He's also done his part by giving me the capabilities to bring them to life,
Yeah.
right? And God blessed me so much with enough time to be able to like build the product, a wife that would encourage me even when I felt discouraged, an environment that was good enough for me to, sit. I had a comfortable house for me to sit, to do the work. So I had literally everything I could need. Whenever I needed funds to hire someone else to do, I had the funds, right? So God gave me all these things, and I knew that I had to be accountable. And every time I thought about it, I knew God was nudging me to ask me. God can see everything we're doing, right?
Yeah.
But he keeps asking, what about this idea? Why are you stopping? What's going on? So I had to be accountable, and I hold myself accountable to him. I always have it at the back of my mind that on that last day, in that bed, wherever it may be, that when I'm taking accounts and I'm talking to God about what I did with my life, and he's asking me questions about these ideas, I need to be able to answer the questions. So I think it's also important to have someone. There's no better person than God to have as someone to hold you accountable for these ideas you have. If there's no accountability, things fall apart, because the Bible says when there's no law, then like literally there's no sin. I'm just paraphrasing now, that when there's no law, there's no sin. So when you're not accountable to anything, then anything goes. And one of the anything that goes is giving up.
Yeah.
But when you're accountable to God, then you know that, okay, I can't give up, right?
Yeah.
So that was the case for me.
Absolutely. And I always say your accountability is tied to your creativity. So God has put those ideas, those gifts, those skills, those talents in you, listening to me, listening to us. And he's going to ask you, what did you do with the talent I gave you? And you're going to have to give account. Do you want to be like the one who was tagged a lazy and a wicked servant, and who said, well, I buried my ideas, I buried my talent in the dirt because I was afraid, because I didn't have support, because I was discouraged, because I didn't have capital, because nobody liked my idea, or because I wasn't getting likes on social media, or whatever it is? Do you want to be that person, or you want to be the person that will say, oh, my Lord, you gave me this idea, you gave me this talent, you gave me this gift, you gave me this skill, and I had some challenges along the way, but somehow I figured it out. I sought for help where I needed help, and now I was able to double the result, or increase the results. I've been able to impact lives with this. I've been able to touch lives with this idea, and this is the result of the idea. Where you will be, to choose.
It reminds me of the story of the wicked servant, in quotes, that you just referenced in the Bible. Like, in actual sense, he wasn't wicked, but what God termed as
wickedness was to the people that he would have served.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So what God termed as wickedness was having that talent and then burying it,
and
not
hiding it.
yeah, exactly, not giving it expression. So for some people, giving it expression could be handing the idea over to someone else, right? Because Jesus said that even if he was to put the money in the bank, you could have done that.
With usury, yeah, because the
Yes,
bank would know what to do with it.
they would know
Right.
what to do with it. Yeah. So the main thing is that give expression
To that
to
idea.
that idea. Yeah.
Birth your brainchild. And I think this is a very good place to bring our discussion to a close. I want to say thank you so much, Samuel, for sharing your story without withholding, because I believe there are millions of people out there in that category that this would really transform their lives. This would really inspire them. And for you listening to me on the other side, I want you to evaluate yourself. Are there ideas that you have that you allow to lie dormant? Are there skills, experiences, stories that you should be telling that you refuse to tell because you are scared about what people would think? You are scared about what if it doesn't work, or you're discouraged that you've tried it before and it failed, or maybe you need to talk to someone. I encourage you to, whatever you do, not take those ideas to the grave. I have a program. I've said it before on this show, and I would say it again. It's tagged Creativity Accelerator. It's a program. It's a course and a coaching program where I help busy professionals and busy entrepreneurs to go from idea to profitable creations with speed and direction. The cost of not getting help when you need help and taking advantage of programs like this is that you would have those ideas that could potentially fetch you hundreds of thousands of dollars, like my guest today, but you sleep on them and you take them to the grave. And sometimes you may even, be living in want and in lack when you have something in you that could potentially feed you and your family and your generations to come. So don't sleep
Right.
on your ideas. I'm going to drop the link below to Creativity Accelerator for those who would like to join. And if you don't like to join, there's no pressure. Yeah, but for those who need someone or who needs a kind of structured setting where they can get fired up to create and manifest their creativity, definitely check it out. That's where we're going to leave it for today. I encourage you to share this episode with someone out there that will get inspired and that will be moved and motivated to manifest their creativity. Someone out there that has dormant ideas, suppressed ideas, unrecognized ideas, that needs to give these ideas expression, that needs help birthing their brainchild. And they would be glad you did. So thank you once again for tuning in. And thank you, Samuel, for being an amazing guest today. I'll see you in
Pleasure.
my next episode. Until then, have a good one. Bye.